If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Escape Pod. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity.
And we have a guest.
We do.
You can see our guest now. Yay. Do you want to make the introduction? You know him better than I do.
I would love to. I met Dr. Stephen Tamang probably 3 years ago. He was involved with starting Project Recovery, came to visit One Heart and talk about some collaboration, and learned more about what they did. He learned more about what we do, and they became a referral partner at that time, and it was a good partnership. So met him there, and then we have, for those of you that don't know, we have like 12 partners on campus with us. Journey On is one of those partners, and he serves on the board of directors. Is that still a current thing?
It is,
okay.
Yes.
So just a lot of different intersections we have had over the years, and I've gotten to know him a little bit, and I've just always been impressed with how you conduct yourself, the things you have to say, the thoughtfulness with which you talk. And he was asked to do a series for Monument Health for their podcast, Doc Talk, and invited me on. So got a little more insight into how he operates and how he thinks. So this is payback. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I was going to say this
is a tree. This is a real tree. Yeah.
Like a crossover, like when you see like Chicago Fire and Chicago Med, like crossover. We're doing our own crossover with our podcast. Yeah,
okay, got it.
Just like that.
All right.
Yeah, so we'll get more into who you are, what you do, all of those things. But we're going to start the way we always start, which is, are you escaping from something today?
I'm always having to escape from something or another. I think the thing that comes to mind, I don't know if you guys have kids.
I do.
I have an 8-year-old, and she doesn't like to sleep in her own room.
Oh,
and so
I had that happen.
Yeah, so we're, my wife and I are trying to escape from that and to see her happily sleeping in her own room.
Does she start in her room and then stealthily
So we've tried that.
army crawl toward, because this is what my daughter did for years.
Yeah, we tried that piece for a while, and then she's very persistent, very, very, I would say, stubborn. But also it just means so much to her. So eventually we gave in. But now when school ends, we've made a plan. It's back to your room. So that's the future hope. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just know that the tween years are on the horizon, and then it's not going to be cool anymore. And she'll be like, there's some self-correction that'll happen then. So
good.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
But just, count your blessings that
it's true.
I had parents I never would have done that with, and then that would have been my security blanket.
Right.
So just count your blessings. That's pretty precious.
Yeah, and the snuggles mean a lot. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mine grew out of it, but when he was little, he was a terrible sleeper, super restless, and he would keep my husband awake a lot at night. And it changed the whole way we slept in our house. And at that
a
time,
firefighter, so
so he was like
fun 24-hour shift thing going on.
Going to work and not sleeping, and then coming home and not sleeping, and that didn't go great.
I bet he was super fun to be around.
He was super fun. That's when I was like, why don't you try sleeping in a different room, and we'll see how this goes. But we actually went to our pediatrician at one point, and I was like, let's be clear. This appointment is about us, not about the child. Like, what do we need to do?
Give it back.
And he just said, I hate to tell you, like, he asked all these questions. He checked the kid. He wanted to make sure there wasn't something that might be causing it.
Yeah.
He was great. 45 minutes later, he's like, these are the hardest appointments because there is nothing I can tell you is actually wrong that's causing this. But they do tend to grow out of it. And mine did. He's a little older than, he's 10, not 8. But he is much better at sleeping now than he was for the first probably 4 years of life. It was rough. So, Charity, what are you escaping?
2 things.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, can you see my panda patches today?
No, but
I'll
trust
feel
that you're
them,
there.
So you're just being kind. But oh my Lord, I woke up with just fat eyes. So
from
life's disappointments, probably. Yeah, and all that fun stuff. So that, and then we decided this weekend, since it was nice, because my husband and I love to go on the Mickelson, that we were going to start our journey. And there's only one stretch of the Mickelson that we've never done before, and it's the flattest part, like between Edgemont and Pringle. So we did from Minnetonka to Pringle, so round trip 33 miles, and we're like, okay, that'll be a good kind of warm up, get back into it. He's been biking, but I have done no biking for a couple of years because I was going through physical therapy and all of that. I'm happy to say no back issues. So physical therapy for 2 years has worked. I was solid on the bike, but this is typical charity, and I'm sure you're going to be shocked to learn this. It's like it's sunny, which is my source of happiness and power. And so I'm very solar powered. I'm just enjoying the sunshine, disregarding everything else. We get almost there, and I went, oh, I forgot snacks. And he just shrugs it off like, no big. Has he eaten? No. Did I eat? Not really. Usually I have a protein shake or something in the morning. And it's like, okay, 16 miles one way. We know exactly where we're going. We're going to get there. And, the last couple miles was a little bit, okay, I'm ready to get off the bike for a few minutes, right? On the way back, which is mostly downhill, it still sucked. And I'm just like, and it was hot. Yeah. And we were dehydrated. And I'm like, we were so, because our thing is we like to go hike or bike or something and then go hit, we used to like Minor, but it closed. Go hit a brewery or something and just have a couple adult beverages and enjoy life. And I'm like, I don't think I can have alcohol. I'm going to throw up. So it just a little heat strokey, overdid it because I was determined to get that stretch done. Because you can't just like drop onto the part you didn't finish. You've got to hit a trailhead or it's not complete. And I don't do anything half-assed. So here we go. But I will say, no back issues, and I'm not sore. And now I'm rehydrated, but I'm still, I couldn't believe it. So anyway, Nicholson kicked my butt.
I am escaping. I successfully escaped yet another application. I feel like all I did the month of April was type. So I'm glad to be talking on a podcast for a little bit because I hit submit 5 minutes before coming into the podcast.
Cheers.
Sweet. Yay. I have just water. Woo. So I'm excited about that. All right. Onward and upward. Dr. Tamang, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Rapid City. And a little history, please, sir.
Sure. I'll try not to bore you too much.
It's not boring.
Fairly boring guy. I joined Monument Health in 2014. I'd say that's my first real job.
Okay.
So about 11 years. I still have the same job.
Okay.
Came here in a Toyota Camry. Still have a Toyota Camry. So not a whole lot of things changed in my life. Bought a house. Still have the same house. So real kind of by nature, my temperament is
you
pretty
don't
mild.
like change, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I like systems that are smooth and operational, and so my role has changed a lot. I encountered a couple of significant needs that I thought I could be of use with, and Project Recovery, a small business, was one of them. I've had the privilege of working on some cool stuff for Monument that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more, but I run a lot of addiction services for them now, and and just going forward, try to be as useful a human as I can.
So were you always interested in addiction services, or was this something that by virtue of the lack of attention in that arena in the continuum within our community that necessitated it, or?
Yeah, no, I wasn't interested in addiction at all.
Okay.
If you had asked med school, Stephen, if there was any interest in that, I would have said, I would have had a very negative thought. I think when people think of medicine and addiction, they often think of like the old methadone clinics. That's kind of what people, and that is, to me, I know it has its role, but to me that wasn't appealing at all. It was really around 2017 or so that I became aware that our community had a significant opioid issue. I mean, it had other issues too, but opioid epidemic was raging. It was increasing on a very significant level. And we had nothing. Sioux Falls had stuff, and there was evidence-based treatment that we knew was effective, but it wasn't here. And so a long story made short, we coordinated to find a group of people that thought, okay, we need to bring an evidence-based approach here. and that resulted in starting a business. And you guys probably know David Lust. He was the attorney that helped me get that off the ground. What an amazing man he was, and he helped really interlink a lot of advice and other contacts to sort of build Project Recovery. That's on 625 Florman. And so, that got off the ground, and that was like a big learning experience for me, because that's where you kind of went from just being a physician to, for the first time, sort of identifying a systems-based or a community need, and then being, I would say, tenacious and lucky enough to executing something to try to tackle it. And lucky enough because you can have great ideas, they still fail. Happens all the time. Mm-hmm. But we were able to build this one up, and I'm very proud of what it's done.
Is Project Recovery a for-profit or nonprofit?
It is a for-profit.
It is a for-profit.
And it's a funny story. I have time, so I'll tell you that. I went to David Lust, and I said, I want to start a nonprofit that deals with opioid addiction. And he was a pro, so he asked me some questions, obviously, and he said, well, are you going to fundraise? And I said, nope. I can't stand the thought of asking people for money. I'll never fundraise. And he goes, well, where's the funding going to come from? I'm like, it's going to be philanthropy. I'm just going to pay for it, And my wife and I had set out a budget. It was $5,000 a month. That was our goal. We had a $10,000 seed, $5,000 a month. And he said, are you going to have any source of revenue? I'm like, well, if they have insurance, we'll bill insurance. And he goes, okay, well, you don't want it to be a non-for-profit. Then you want a professional corporation, because then it counts as like it's better from a tax standpoint, and it's more appropriate legally. So that helped a ton, because he was absolutely right. And I'm glad I didn't go to LegalZoom or some nonsense. I'm glad I didn't try to do it myself. So it got set up as an S Corp. And then shockingly, along the way, it turned into a viable business because the demand was huge and there was no supply. So we were the only show in town. When we started, there is a little clinic, or it's not a clinic, it's a counseling outfit, Addiction Recovery Center in the Black Hills. I'm sure you guys are familiar with them.
Also a partner.
Yep. Doug was the CEO at the time, now Julie. They were big supporters. They let us have a little room in their spot. And so me, a couple of as-needed nurses that were passionate about it, we started there. And we had a huge wait list day one.
Wow.
Yeah, huge. And so we had these little flip phones that we were using to run this business that was supposed to be in the evening. And giant list. And so it became apparent, okay, this is a real business need. And then we can't run this as like 3 times a week after my clinic. Because I've been a full-time doc the whole time. I never was anything less than 1 full FTE. So everything was done in the evenings. And so once I recognized that was there, it took a few leaps of faith, but we ended up hiring folks. I got a great manager, David Christensen. He's one of the key attributes to why that business was successful. But we started building it, and before long, the revenue stream from like a historically terrible payer source. We never charged, if someone couldn't pay, we never charged them, but a lot of people did have Medicaid. And we finally figured out how to bill IHS successfully. We finally figured out how to bill some of the other insurances successfully. Mm-hmm. The revenue stream would support a basic clinic. And so we ended up buying the property. I ended up buying the property on 625 Florman, the old Med 5 bank. Mm-hmm. And those folks, Pam Brown, she was the president. She still is the president of Med 5, now Aspen Federal Credit Union. They were great. And I could talk a lot about that, but I'll just say they were great. And they gave us a community supportive deal, I'll say. So we purchased that, and then Skull Construction, I would say, also gave us a community supportive price to kind of to overdo it to make it a clinic. So and I don't want to blabber on about this because I could go on for hours, but ultimately 2018 it turned into a pretty viable organization, and I exited the position last year to a group of folks that were very passionate about taking it to the next level. It has now opened up a branch in Sioux Falls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're seeing, when I exited, we were at about 1,000 patients a month. That was the foot traffic on it. And it saved tons of lives, and it improved the quality of a lot of other lives. And it was entirely marketplace demand. So I'm really proud of that. I learned a ton about business, critical thinking, problem solving, personnel management. permitting, zoning. I mean, everything. You
Yeah.
learn through all of it. So
Where did your MBA fit in there, before or after? Project
after,
Recovery?
but it would have been better if it was before.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the first taste where I always thought, and this is probably not wise to say, I always thought administrators were not anything I aspired to reach. I thought the greatest good that I could do as a human was being the best doctor possible. And I think there's still merit to that. But with Project Recovery, I realized that if you want to have systems-based change, you need to be able to leverage infrastructure that is beyond one person's ability. And that is when I said, okay, I should get some formal training. You probably picked this up, but I tend to get a little competitive. And so when I'm in a directorship role, I want to make sure that I'm as prepared as humanly possible. So I saw there was a lot of different MBA options in healthcare management that kind of split traditional business with that. So Western Governor University was a great option. I had a colleague that went through that for their MBA, so signed up for that, got that done.
And you did that in what time? I feel like he might have some kind of time-altering
I know,
device.
right?
If so, can I use it, please?
Yeah.
Please.
It's so
How'd you
cool.
do that with kids and
Yeah, it's nowadays you can learn anything really pretty quickly. LLMs, made it possible.
I feel like you're downplaying probably how smart you are, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it is no longer locked to being able to memorize things. Honestly, there are people that are much more intelligent than me and can sit through a lecture and assimilate tons of data and reproduce it on a test. I always did great in college, but that was not my skill set. Being able to talk with an LLM through various topics is, for me, is a game changer. Being able to paste sections of textbooks into an LLM and being able to build frameworks made it possible to knock out those level of classes. So, and I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but the way it works with Western governors is some of this stuff is like papers and stuff, but then like half of the classes that you'd have to take a test that's proctored, so they film you,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's like, you have to be able to take in a fair amount of
Still do it,
data
yeah.
and then take a test. And if I did not if the year had been a few years earlier before you had access to these large language models, it would have taken me, it would have been in the years frame instead of within under a year to acquire it. And so it's amazing. And if anyone's not using them, I strongly recommend it because
I will pass that on to my husband, who's just embarking upon his master's with Johns Hopkins. So
yes.
I'm gonna give him a little nudge in that direction.
Yeah, it's a
call
game
Steven.
changer. It's a game changer for sure.
Yeah.
Can you mention Project Recovery had a wait list from the day you opened?
Yeah.
What were common themes, if there were any, that you tend to see with people who have addictions, and then also those who seek help for those addictions?
Yeah. So addiction is very broad, depending on who you ask. In our case, opioid addiction was what we were targeting.
Focused on, yep.
Because that is one of the types of addiction that we actually have tools for that are pretty effective. So
Okay.
buprenorphine, or
Right.
commonly known as Suboxone, is a very effective tool for that, in addition to traditional behavioral health interventions and things of that nature. So for us, patients, we never advertised once. We never spent $1 on advertising. It was the patients are quite intelligent in knowing what they need, and most of these people would intermittently be on appropriate treatment because they would travel all over the place, and we had people going out of state for it. We had people,
Okay.
of course, going to Sioux Falls. We had people buying it illicitly off the black market
Because they were desperate.
and they weren't interested in abusing pain pills or heroin. The folks that came to us, they weren't in the I'm having fun phase anymore. Mm-hmm. They were in the I'm in the compulsion phase, and I want something to keep control of my life. So a lot of people are like, well, how do you deal with this population? But frankly, the population that they self-selected to come to Project Recovery, there's no court orders. Nobody's being forced to be there by their parole officer. They were self-selecting to be there.
Sounds like One Heart.
Yeah. And so it was, that was the trend there. Now, speaking more broadly about addiction, it gets a lot harder to improve outcomes. Opioids are the easiest from a systems-based standpoint to mitigate the damaging effects. Alcohol is probably the second that we have the most efficacy for, and then methamphetamines is like the most difficult systems-based problem that we have. Yeah.
We don't have a super good solution for that one.
We have very limited. Yeah.
That one's hard. That's just, do you think that's just by virtue of what goes into it? I mean, you've looked at how they make meth, right?
Yeah, and there's several different methods of methamphetamines.
Just could not do it.
The thought of putting that in your body just doesn't sound enticing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of books written by a guy named Sam Quinone. The Least of Us is his most recent one. And he's a journalist, and I've recommended it to anyone who kind of wants to take a deeper dive. But he talks about from a journalistic perspective, all these stories and the production. And he talks about opioids, but also there's stuff on meth there. And a couple of interesting facts. Methamphetamine. So all drugs rewire your brain.
Yep.
And this is something that a lot of people don't understand. Early on, addiction to substances is about choices. You're making some questionable choices. But later on, it's about compulsions. And depending on your particular neuroanatomy, the compulsions can be severe or they can be completely overwhelming. But it's usually in that framework. Right. And so methamphetamines, the way these things kind of work on the brain, it's all related to like how large these dopamine surges are. And I won't, there's different opinions about this, but the portion of the brain that's flooded with dopamine is in charge of determining sort of memory, like, wow, that felt good. I know how to do that again. And it sort of turns off your prefrontal cortex, like, hey, it's okay that we're doing this. Like it convinces you to do it. Opioids can bump your dopamine like maybe 200%. Alcohol, nicotine, maybe 200-300%. Cocaine, maybe you're getting closer to 400%. Methamphetamines, when you take that, you get a dopamine spike in the thousands.
Holy moly. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it creates a tremendous hijacking of your neuroanatomy. And so when you go through the binge intoxication phase of methamphetamines, obviously the human feels incredible, and the prefrontal cortex is turned off, so your like decision making is nullified.
You don't consequences. No.
Yeah. Nope.
No consequences.
The front of your brain isn't thinking, and then that feedback loop from that dopamine surge is so powerful that it creates like almost immediate motor memory. This is why, the campaign that went along that was very unsuccessful, like, don't even do it once. Like, there was this campaign. That was based on a science thing. Like, that was based on, we don't even let them do this once because it'll change their neuroanatomy. Yeah. It was very unsuccessful because it was, like, super paternalistic, and it didn't hit with people. But the idea was right.
Right, it's true. It's just the marketing wasn't the best.
Exactly. Yeah. And so once they've gone through this phase, and certainly after they've done it multiple times, now you have a chronic disease.
Yeah.
And we need to look at these patients differently. You no longer would expect complete abstinence realistically. It's just not in the ballpark. There are ways to find yourself in recovery. Where you're not using substances for protracted periods. And the goal is never to use them again, but the compulsions will remain. And it's you can think of someone who's smoked, a nicotine addiction, tobacco use disorder. This is mild in comparison to stimulant use disorder. But if you were a heavy smoker at some period in your life and you managed to get off, which is quite a feat, and then you manage to stay off, you know that when your walls get knocked down through various stressors, life stress, insomnia, whatever, the propensity to relapse for nicotine is very high. Imagine that for stimulants at not even in the same
5
realm.
5 times the rate.
Yeah.
Does it equate? So like if it's 5 times the dopamine hit, it's also 5 times harder to dodge that compulsion when it's being triggered?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it. It's just like a really powerful way to hijack the pleasure system of your brain. And people are like, how can these folks with these addictions not care about their kids, not care about being homeless, not care about, taking care of themselves? Even like there are people who will inject themselves with blood contaminated dope from someone that they know has hepatitis C. It's how is that possible? What's going on in that person's brain?
Never heard this.
And
Wow.
the reason is, in that person's mind, the dopamine surge is the most important thing in the universe times like a factor of 50. Like your child is probably next, but it's like nothing. It's like a tiny little thing. And here's the scary part about that is it's rational to them. To us, it would be irrational. It wouldn't make any sense. But to someone whose brain has been rewired to seek a 100% increase in dopamine, that hit of methamphetamines is the only reason to live. And so when you frame it from that standpoint, you understand why someone would give themselves Hep C. They don't care. The dopamine hit is more important, and it's rational from their perspective. And when you say like, people, there's like common things like all addicts are liars, it's not that they're all liars, it's that they're all desperate. They're completely desperate. And so
It's how they get their needs met.
that's right. So dishonesty is not something that triggers them with concern. My reputation means nothing. I have no moral code because what I need is that feeling again that I had before, and my dorsal striatum and other parts of my neuroanatomy are telling me I remember how to get that, and your prefrontal cortex is completely turned off. It's completely inhibited. Your limbic system is in full activation, and your amygdala is saying, we're in a horrible state of pain. You have to fix this, and you can't cut through the noise.
We've talked about this several times, even on the podcast, about our first year we were open. That was incredibly eye-opening for me, in that we had guests who I knew loved their kids, and they couldn't stop
Could
using.
not stop. Yeah.
And how I talk to my own children is different because of that. Like, don't even do it once.
Yeah.
Like, you can think curiosity out the window. Like, it is so powerful. And I often say the devil is in that drug, and it's because of what we've seen, people who have so much potential, but the craving is that much bigger. And it is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. But I do talk to my kids differently because of the fact that I've seen people who want to be different, and they can't figure it out. They can't get over it.
And I think it's something, too, where when you think of when you have actually spent time, I was raised by one, but didn't spend time with them at that level, but someone who is an addict and they're still so multifaceted.
Yeah.
I think of two in particular. My son got to work with them over at the coffee shop here, and he'd come home with like lessons, well, first of all, they share a lot and overshare. And it's like, I just learned things I don't know that I wanted to learn. But, just those stories and those histories and those different facets. And these are two people that, I care deeply about. Our first two that really fell off the wagon, and in a bad way, both ended up losing their children and permanently. And it's just heartbreaking. And we wish them the best. They just can't be that here. And, so they kind of self-discharged because of that. But we also, on the happy side, we have seen people many years free of relapse or lapsing at all. And that's got to be good for the brain. Is there a length of time that I don't know if it's been studied long enough, I have no idea, if you can make it this many years without touching it, that you're now rewired in a positive way, or is the rewiring permanent? Like, how does that work with meth?
Yeah, it's a great question because no one knows for sure.
Okay.
We have some rough guidelines, and very intelligent people and groups have tried to stratify various timeframes. With alcohol, we kind of have sort of we have well delineated timeframes in terms of withdrawal and then the depressive phase that comes after it. It's generally thought to be a chronic condition.
Okay.
And again, you can kind of intuitively understand that if you go back to some of our own personal vices, and you can think, because your brain has memory, all of us do, and so if you do something once, it's easy enough to do it again, and then you just magnify that. So, I've taken care of, a lot of patients with addiction, and the ones that seem to have found their way out, it seems like they've restructured their whole lives, to protect themselves. And I've also noted that they've developed stress management techniques, like their global functioning improved, and they don't really let their guard down. And I've seen you can get this artificially too. So like Alcoholics Anonymous, the reason why this program has success is because folks are going there every day. They are it's not, if you've ever been to one of the meetings, nothing profound is said at these meetings. It is a constant reorientation that happens at these meetings, and that's why it's powerful.
I think that's our campus.
Yeah.
Because it's an environment that is not conducive for that thing, whatever that thing is, and
Right.
I believe that's
Safe space, right? It's a protected space. I feel like peer support, where you have a group of people that can relate to you, and they're all kind of holding each other accountable. The Oxford houses, that's the same kind of thing. So while it is chronic for almost everybody, there are structures and systems where you can reorganize your life. Like, not everybody approaches life, the same way. Not everyone's analytical about things. And so for those folks, like getting plugged into some kind of system, usually it's not your family, unfortunately. Right. Usually family, in my experience, seems to be the opposite, which is, really sad. It usually comes down to finding your people that care about you, and just by light of being someone with an addiction who's fighting for sobriety, you give them strength, and they give you strength, and you end up kind of living your day-to-day existence in an environment where you have a degree of support. And it's interesting, if you know people that struggle with addiction on a semi-deep level, they can kind of tell when they're starting to get weak, and a lot of times they'll tap out of stuff. Or like I've had folks that have worked for me, and they're like, my stress level's getting too high, and I can feel I'm losing control. And so they'll have insight into that, and they'll be able to self-mitigate that. So I don't think it's realistic to suggest that it ever goes away, but I do think with quite a lot of effort, the symptoms can be mitigated to where you don't lose control. And then, of course, there's pharmacology, which can be very beneficial depending on which substance you're talking about.
Interesting. Do you want to lighten things up just a little bit?
Sure. Let's do that. So, in your work as a hospitalist and now a community leader, getting into the for-profit human services space and running for city council, if you could have any superpower to make all of that easier, what would it be and why?
Superpower.
This is a fun question.
Yeah.
What I find most frustrating, that I wish I could snap my finger and have it go away, is I wish people could appreciate nuance a little better. I find when I'm trying to answer a question or something on something that's complicated and you have a very little amount of time, the more nuance you dig into it, it seems like somehow it's like it makes it less attractive to people. Whereas if you just sort of make some general statement that's false like 30% of the time, somehow that is like that's the winner,
Well, it's what they want to hear typically when you're asked a question. Most of the time in those spaces, it's not because I want to learn and I really want to know what you think of this. It's I want to know whether you can validate what I already believe, if you're a good guy or you're a bad guy. That's kind of
black and white.
I've been in that arena. Yeah. Every question's a loaded question, right?
Yeah. But I just I guess I would snap my fingers and say everybody needs to attempt to seek the truth. because things are not the way we often see them. Things are multifaceted.
Yes.
And then you kind of dance around some of these really deep topics like, homelessness. Everybody's got an opinion on homelessness. And everyone's pretty confident of their opinion on homelessness. But if you step into the arena and you start actually understanding the epidemiology of homelessness and you have practical experience working with homeless, I can pretty well say that the vast majority of people would rethink their views on homelessness quickly. And so it would be lovely if we could somehow convince everybody to be humble, with their thoughts, including myself. Be willing to learn, be willing to be vulnerable in your ignorance and be like, these are the principles that I know to be true. How those principles can eventually get to something that I can apply to a system to help humans is unclear, but we're working towards it. I think if we could get there, that would be a pretty cool thing.
Well, here's my hope for you, because I noticed I did go to a recent candidate forum and got to see you in action along with all of the other people running for city council this round. And I've never seen someone with this effect. So Julie's known me for many years. She knows my husband, and I always call it the halo effect, where that husband of mine has this way with the dimples, just like you have, of like saying things that are hard to say and that are very nuanced in a way that doesn't elicit anger and aggression and combativeness, but is like, oh, okay, all across the spectrum, people hear it. And it's a delivery, I think, is huge. And I watched you, and you have that gift. And I've really never seen anyone else in that space. I thought my husband was a unicorn, so he just got knocked off his pedestal. So that really is going to work in your favor, because I think deep down, people don't want to be pandered to. They want to really know the truth, because if they can't understand something in all its multifacetedness,
Sure.
I just make up words. Every word originated somewhere.
Okay. We know what you mean.
But if they can't truly understand it, they can't truly form an opinion or be part of a solution or even have an intelligent conversation on it.
Yeah.
So I think just the way that you deliver that, I thought it was very, very tactful. There were some hard questions, and you did that with a little smirk, a little dimple pop and all the stuff. And it just, I've been in those spaces, and the things you would say, had they been delivered differently, would have elicited some, and it didn't. So keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's an interesting process for sure.
Yeah.
And trying to take it one step at a time and just do the best job I can.
So you brought up the topic of homelessness. So, as you mentioned, you are a board member with Journey On, a partner of ours who we appreciate. They focus both on homelessness and suicide prevention. What's an initiative that you're excited about in that realm that you're excited about maybe making a difference here in Rapid City?
Yeah. Well, to take kind of a step back, I feel like a lot of our societal problems, both as a community and kind of as a nation, I think we're getting a lot better on things. I know it doesn't feel like it if if you watch the news, but if you look at, violent crime, extreme poverty rates, tobacco use, like all life expectancy, like all these things over time are improving, dramatically. And, there's several others. But homelessness, for some reason, it is the worst that it's ever been since we started tracking it in like the 70s. And I'm not smart enough to understand exactly why that is, but it's a big problem. And then here locally, depending on who you believe, Native Americans make up about 8 to 10% of the population. And again, depending on who you believe, they make up 65 to 80% of the homeless population. So you have the homeless issue, but then you also have a terrible health disparity and a marginalized group. So it's like in our region, it's not, when you talk about homeless, it's difficult to take out the fact that there's also a marginalized group in the midst of the homelessness. It's not always the case in communities. Sometimes homelessness can be, it tends to be the poor. It's not, or the mentally ill, or those with addiction. It doesn't always tend to fall on such substantial racial lines. So to that end, you have to try to solve a problem in a specific vein. And so you look at what everybody's doing. And there's many organizations that are doing a lot of good things that have very different philosophies. And I think you need a spectrum of services, and you need, because it is so multifaceted, you need to approach it from a lot of different angles. And I've seen now several different models in play. I've seen sort of the emergency shelter side of things, like Cornerstone does an excellent job on sort of the emergency shelter side of things, some of the programming. And then you see, organizations like Journey On that deal with crisis and more of a cultural advocacy sort of thing. And then you have many other like Native-run, groups that have various elements. I put One Heart kind of at the end of the spectrum that takes folks that are struggling with homelessness and helps support them over kind of one of the hardest pieces, which is sort of being homeless but wanting to improve and having a little stability to functional member of society. So you kind of need this whole spectrum. And then one thing that I'm working on from the health system side of things is medical respite. That's a unique solution because it deals with just a sliver of the homelessness. It deals with the homeless who are ill, that are currently hospitalized. Because if you look at data to determine which group of homelessness causes the most strain to a system, a community, it's typically the ill. Because they're frequently activating EMS services.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you are ill, you also tend to be more erratic. You can't handle a night in the cold if you have a wound, so you might be inclined to commit a crime to get attention, to go somewhere safe because jail is safe in that setting. And so medical respite is something that I think, I partnered through Monument Health with the Department of Health at the city level, multiple agencies to try to get that program up and running, and it's making its way, and I'm excited that that'll move the needle some, and then continuing to support the other groups that are trying to take it on. I would never be critical of any group that steps forward to try to take a swing at homelessness. It takes a ton of courage, and I look at some of people talk about solutions all the time. They bring a lot of ideas. I very rarely do I find myself saying, "Oh, that's a bad idea." I was like, "Try it." See where it goes, because you'll probably learn something in the process and continue to refine. You got people doing like various ways of feeding people, various ways of doing social work, various ways of like there's people with trucks trying to get people showers, and all this stuff that these options don't appeal to me, because to me it doesn't seem like necessarily going to get us to the solution. But I'm not critical of them because it doesn't harm, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this does reach to some people. So we have to just keep moving forward as a society. And then so that's like the urgency. But then of course there's system-based solutions above that get into local government, trying to keep affordable housing, try to keep people falling out of housing. Having better mental health services, having better addiction services, having general coverage for healthcare. A lot of things that go into it at the upper echelon too.
Yeah, when we came online, one of our big talking points, if you will, and it continues to be to this day, is the cliff effect and that role in people's lives where, our goal here isn't just to bump them an inch above the poverty line, because in a lot of cases that then they lose benefits that actually put them in worse positions in life, right? And so give them time and give them resources and give them a very hefty support system under them to allow them to get closer to living wages where, one little incident doesn't drop them back into the crisis of poverty. And yeah, we have witnessed on many occasions, people who never thought they would be able to do that and leave this campus doing that.
Yeah.
And it's pretty incredible.
And even, I would talk about that a lot in the community. People would say, oh, so the next step is Section 8 housing. Nope, that's not my goal.
Right.
Does that happen occasionally? Yes, it sure does happen occasionally. There are some people that is just the next logical best step for them, but it's not for most people. And we have now taken these charities' very idealistic goals, and it's like, look at what we're doing. And people are self-sufficient in the community, even people with addiction that never thought this would be possible for them. I mean, going back to something you said with regard to people attempting different approaches within the homeless space, would you, I guess what I've seen over the years is there's kind of some territorialism.
Oh, yeah.
And that silliness of like, I care more
It's a context
about
sport.
this population than you do because my approach is better. I guess I would say I agree with everything you say with the caveat that I wish there were more genuine collaboration. Like you just said, I recognize, hey, it's worth a try. I'm going to support you in that space. Why can't we be more supportive of one another instead of making it a competition? Because then I think it just muddies the waters. And we knew this. I mean, building One Heart, we knew that there was not going to ever be a single human services nonprofit that was the solution. And to this day, there are community members that will stand up before city council and say, One Heart was supposed to solve everything. I'm like, the hell it was. I built it, and I can assure you that I was under no delusion that we could solve everything.
Didn't you even go back and look at a
Well,
speech?
they were gaslighting me so much. I thought, oh my God, did I
say that?
Did I say something? And I mean, I
never
went
made
back,
that
I
claim,
watched
no.
every flippin' presentation before council or vision committee and all this stuff. And I'm like, I never said it.
Yeah. I do think, though, we did, to his point about who needs some of the most help, is that we did make the argument, and we still maintain this, that when you bump a group of people well above the poverty line and they don't need all the help all the time, your resources can be spent on the ones who do.
Who are going to
need
persistently need those resources. Yeah.
Yeah. So that we haven't stopped thinking.
I was going to say, too, thinking about like your systems approach, it reminded me, and I know we've talked about the data on here before. I haven't looked at it for a number of months, so please don't quote me on this. But one of the things that I was really intent on doing with this model was looking at, as you know, I mean, people struggling in crisis and the crisis of poverty, homelessness, any of that stuff, typically utilize law enforcement and first responder services at a much higher rate.
Yeah.
By virtue of the way their brain is wired. They're not thinking like, oh, because prefrontal cortex is out of the picture. It's not logical. It's just said, oh, call 911. I'm going to get help, right? That's how I get my needs met. I don't have resources in like my sphere of influence to help me with this thing, or I do, but I can't recognize it because of the way my brain is firing at the moment. And so we theorized that if we could create this campus with 24-hour safety and security, could we reduce those calls for service? My husband helped, and we went through the data, the chief of police, all the stuff. We went through it last year, and we looked at every single adult on the One Heart campus. If they've been on campus 12 months, we looked at their history 12 months prior to entering One Heart. If it was 6 months, and so on and so forth. And we reduced calls for service by like 90%.
Yeah.
And we reduced arrests by like 80+%. And I'm like, huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Meaningful, very meaningful.
So we're saving taxpayers' money.
Mm-hmm.
We're saving the city money. We're saving the hospital money, like all the stuff,
Right.
all these services, and still just getting our teeth kicked in all the time. So.
Well, yeah, and it's
not by you though. Thank you
no,
for being a
of
gentleman.
course. It is unfortunate there's not more collegialism, I guess I would say, and I think that gets a little bit complicated too. I think for the most part, when it comes to the ideas, I think there's a few filters that are worth applying. Like one is, who's paying to have it done. One thing that I admire about One Heart is you have a lot of people that have donated money because they believe in the vision. Like and I don't know the details, but I know that there's substantial funding that's outside of the city. Like, and that means that you have people that believe in it and that you're using, their gift to execute. That's something that we should all get behind. It's if you're funded solely from the city, then the taxpayers have the right to say, we don't like that.
0% from the city, just for the record.
There you go. So
and I would like to keep it that way.
Yeah. And so it's a different discussion. If a private group of people come up with a plan to care for a subset of folks, and they're doing so in a legal manner that doesn't hurt anyone else, they should, in my view, be allowed and honestly applauded for that. I think some of the issues, if we're all fighting over a pile of money, or we're all fighting for the same grant, or for whatever, those things can be kind of contentious and they get battled out, and sort of the winner wins. But for the most part, I think it's wise to stay humble on this topic, stay mission focused. And by the way, if someone else happens to solve a big chunk of homelessness, we should be like, oh, wonderful.
Right.
Not,
Thank you. I can always find something else to do. I mean, I was just last night questioning my life choices, thus the baggage under my eyes today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's true. And I hope that as time goes on, nationwide and in our community, we see an improvement. I think we will. I think we're going to. I hope. I'm optimistic, but we can't be complacent.
Right.
So what keeps you up? That actually, I was moving on to this question. What keeps you motivated and optimistic? You're, a doctor. You're now a political candidate. You're part of nonprofit work in the community as a board member.
Dad.
So, yeah, not to mention a family at home. What does keep you motivated, and what's something that maybe you do to just stay on top of your own good mental health, good habits, those types of things? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you sleep 2 hours a day and you just put on a happy face for the escape pod.
No, I think I think I'm blessed to just have sort of a natural temperament that don't get too high, don't get too low.
Okay.
And then I think naturally I just find fulfillment from doing things that I think are awesome, and which to me is bringing about some sort of change that's good for some group of people. And in my view, the most vulnerable, or the people that are the most difficult, are the most rewarding. I was that way as a primary care doc too. I was always happy to accept the folks that had been fired by multiple practices, because not trying to brag, but what I would say is, anybody can take care of somebody who does everything you tell them to, and they show up on their appointment times and they have plenty of resources to buy their meds. But if you can take care of someone who's non-compliant and combative and full of crazy ideas, that's who a good doctor is. It's that ability. And it's the same thing at this level, where if you're talking about at a health system level where you work, or you're talking about the city level, you have very finite power. You're working within a system of many people and decision makers, and so your job would be to find elegant solutions that would bring forth those cool things. And if you can get those, for me, that's a huge dopamine hit. Like Project Recovery was something that I'm super proud of. That happened. I can't quantify it, but I know a lot of lives were saved. I know a lot of lives are better. And that's awesome. That's, treating hepatitis C, that was another thing that I got involved in. And, we cured, scores of patients with hep C that no one else was doing, because it was so difficult to track the patients.
To reach them, right.
Yeah. So difficult to get the meds that were tens of thousands of dollars covered. Tons of logistical work. But again, at night, sometimes when you're having a really bad day, you think back, there's 100+ people that don't have hep C because of the work we did there. And I can say for sure that was our team. There's they never would have got it anywhere else in our community. That's super meaningful to me. It kind of aligns with sort of a Christian, in my view, a Christian philosophy of sort of faith through action. So I take a ton of fulfillment through that. I don't like to talk about it. I like to try to do it. And that keeps me going. Because that's not it's not work if you are self-motivated through it. It's fun.
It's fueling.
It's exactly. It's fueling. And it's and then when people get in your way, learning how to, meet them where they're at and not get derailed in some sort of silly battle. It's okay, we have a difference of agreement on this. You're attacking me for all these silly reasons. Good luck to you. I'm going to try to be kind to you, but I'm not going to let you stop me if I can help it. That was something that's hard. You have to kind of because if you do anything, you're going to have people that criticize you. You're going to have people that maybe they don't directly stand in your way, but they undermine. And the hard part there, to not get derailed, is you have to kind of think of them sort of like the way you treat your patients. In a way, it's I'm going to give you grace. I'm going to try to work with you, but I'm not going to let you stop me. So so just sort of a natural. I think just kind of built this way to kind of keep going for as long as I can.
Awesome.
How many hours do you sleep at night?
It's variable. I need to sleep more.
Okay.
But the kids actually help me because I have to put them to sleep, and so I get more sleep because of them than I would otherwise. My brain rolls a lot, and so I talk out loud sometimes at night, and my wife will say, "What was that about?" And I'm sorry, I'm having a conversation with somebody. I was like, "Oh, I was just talking to this person in my head, for this meeting I have tomorrow, and I don't, but I do. I am religious on a couple of things. I know it doesn't look like it, but I try to exercise every day. That's really important. That's a mental thing. To answer your question, that's really important. If I don't do that, I get super crabby. So I have to exercise every day and try to stay. I need family time. Otherwise, I get super bad dad guilt. So I got to have plenty of family time, and then everything else I try to put into to work.
Okay.
Awesome.
Anything else you're just dying to ask him?
No, I mean I
could ask a million questions.
No, this is
great.
me. Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I'm just grateful that you came in to spend the time with us. And I'm noticing a lot of similarities and how we're wired. Our outward approaches are just very different in how we deal with difficult people and situations. So, I mean, look what I keep here. Just as a reminder, it is illegal to stab people for being stupid. And that's just my gentle reminder of okay, I've got to give them grace. They can't help it that they're stupid. So that's how I give grace to people. I don't want to go to jail.
So let's do escapism co-host style, shall we? Before we wrap things up here. So if she didn't mention this before we started, we always start with what we're escaping from, kind of the negative things that we're happy to kind of get a break from in this space for a little bit. What are you escaping to? Something that you look forward to. It can be a mindset. It can be a book. It can be a place if you're going on vacation or something like that. Do you have somewhere you would like to be?
Yeah.
He's like, wait, I do.
We have, so I'm taking my kids on their first international trip.
Ooh. Oh, my.
Yeah. So in August, we're going to go hit London and Paris.
Oh.
And, so I'm excited about that. I'm told when they hit adolescence, they don't want to hang out anymore. So I'm going to try to check a few things off the box. Really, I've never been to Europe, so this will be our first venture.
I don't know about that. I mean, I have 2 adult kids, and they still love hanging out with us, and they always they never went through that stage. We were just the cool parents, I guess. So with the whole, trying to the sleeping situation, I think you guys are probably okay.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I'm not the cool parent. I asked my 14-year-old the other day if I could sit by him at a meeting. He did not want to sit by me.
I will have a talk with him next time you bring him in the office.
The 10-year-old still.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves me, but wanting to be right next to you might be 2 different things. How about you?
Well, we're getting ready to do the SHRM conference, human resource managers, and go and pitch Gravitate. And that's our big new. I don't know if we even talked about that. Did we ever talk about that?
We talked about Gravitate.
Okay. Yeah. So that's our new big push and big objective. And I'm kind of a project-based person. So that's the next big thing that is consuming the majority of my bandwidth. And also responsible for these lovely additions to my face today. 3 days, 2.5 days. And Julie and Carabeth and I are going to tag team that and spread the word.
Any quality time with Carabeth
it's fun. I wish I had them here, but she did some, like for swag, there are these HR stickers. There's 3 different versions, and they are the funniest thing.
Clever.
They're so funny and quirky, and people are going to eat them up. But
I don't really have a fun escape. Well, no, that's not true. I do. It's a little bit silly.
You're going to get your tongue pierced.
No. Hard no.
Belly button, something.
Bingo.
What?
Bingo on Friday night at our little
Sexy
school.
bingo, God in your blood.
Not sexy bingo.
But it
is
did.
highly appropriate at the school. No, it's our bingo night, and it is second only to the family dance that people just love. So,
Julie, you're just so damn wholesome. I don't know how to handle it.
I'm pretty boring.
Yeah.
You know this about
No, I know this, and I did feel for you in January when there was a fundraiser at a venue, Robbinsdale.
And it was a little
And it was for
mildly
One Heart,
inappropriate.
Sexy Bingo. Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. It's so over the top that it's funny. Like, that's where, I really wasn't.
I mean, there's still some things we sit there at the table and go, if we get bingo, I'm going to say bingo because I'm not going up on that stage to get
correct.
X, Y, Z. It's
But
not happening.
all in all, it was pretty harmless. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. You're welcome back anytime when you need an escape from all of the things. We have padded walls.
Yeah. I love them. Thank you. No, it's wonderful conversation. My pleasure.
We're so glad you were here. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in, all you escape artists out there. We are grateful for every one of you. The Escape Pod is a labor of love. We talk about this every week. We are on a mission to grow the podcast so we can pour more resources into our nonprofit, One Heart, in Rapid City, where every dollar empowers people to break free from crisis and reclaim their lives. And oftentimes it is from trauma and addiction and a lot of hard things that life throws their way. More listeners, of course, means more downloads, more impact. It's that simple.
That's right, Julie. We really are a podcast for a cause. And here's where you come in. You can become a patron at escapepod.live and not only unlock bonus content. I think Julie's been saving up blooper reels on me, probably.
There will be a blooper or two on there.
I'm sure. Definitely a lot of behind-the-scenes laughs, but you can unlock the warm fuzzies of knowing that you're funding real-life breakouts. It's a win-win in this day and age where those seem harder and harder to come by. Evidence. For just a few bucks a month, you're not just a listener. You are a hero in our story.
And please download the episodes because downloading beats streaming every time. It boosts our stats, pulls in more ad revenue, and helps us climb the charts so we can reach even more ears. Share us with a friend, rate and review wherever you listen, and hit the download button. It is a tiny click with a big impact.
And we really do want to hear from you. You can connect with us directly at escapepod.live. Follow us on our socials. Drop us a note at justbecause@escapepod.live or send your wild escape story to us at escapeartist@escapepod.live. And I promise we have been hard at work developing bonus content.
Yeah.
Justice just research contests for us. We have some trivia contests and things coming up, gated content, weekly mini-sodes. We're hitting that next level. So buckle up.
We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, everybody, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it is optional. So stay resilient.
And I don't know, keep popping your dimples.
And keep laughing.